What's up, YouTube? Welcome to Flow State. I'm back. I went to the lake over the weekend, unplugged for a while, had a great time, got back, and no vacation goes unpunished, so I've been busy catching up with things. Actually had a job interview today and got a job offer out of it. So, real life's been busy. But before I keep putting out some more of the videos that I did with Kat, I want to hit a few questions that I got on the last video from Jake Forrest, one of my holy brethren patrons, and tonight I'm gonna put up on Patreon the entire unedited discussion with Kat. Finally, I know I said I'd do it like a week ago. I also plan to have some more shit for the YouTube channel that's free from that conversation, and also we're recording a new My Type of Shit podcast this evening. I think we're just gonna upload it straight up, so that should be available tonight. So the first question was, what was I charged with? Because I mentioned, being in jail. I was charged with a number of things. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. I think I had 9 charges total out of that incident. And the way the legal system works is they just thrash you with any charge they think that they can even halfway justify. So one of them was, or 4 of them actually, were poaching charges due to a video they found on YouTube on Talking with Famous People, where I am holding a camera filming Eric shooting a gun. He's shooting a handgun at some birds off in the distance, and he makes a joking comment that he's hunting like blue jays or some shit. It's obviously in jest. It's obvious, you cannot possibly think that anybody's gonna hit a bird with a pistol way off in the distance. And at the end of the day, I wasn't even shooting a gun. Their evidence against me was a video showing me not doing that. But still, they hit me with 4 poaching charges, as well as a bunch of other drug-related ones, just anything that they can find. And the way that, at least in Kansas, the way Kansas law is structured is there's a lot of presumptions available. So, off the first raid, I got raided 3 times. The first one, they found a quarter ounce of dope, which is like, how do I quantify this? I think it probably cost me like $125 to get that. Now, it is possible if you parted it out into little half grams, you can get $30 or something ridiculous a half gram. I don't know. But the point of it is it just wasn't a lot of drugs that they found in a safe in my house that they had to blow torch open. But from that amount, per the Kansas sentencing grid, the quantity that I possessed was above 3.5 grams and under 100 grams. And in Kansas, the sentencing grid, it calculates the severity of your charge. If you have possession, so the lowest level is just possession, and they don't specify quantity. I assume it's like a dusty baggie or something. Possession is a level 5 drug felony for meth, crack, and heroin are all sort of in the same thing. And then under a gram, so level 4 is less than a gram, but I guess more than a level 5, which must just be a baggie. Level 4 is under a gram. And then level 3 is from 1 gram to 3.5 grams. And drugs are frequently sold in 3.5 grams is 1/8 of an ounce, which is a frequent drug transaction price. That's called an 8 ball. 3.5 grams is an 8 ball. And that's probably 120 bucks on the street. And then over 3.5 grams to 100 grams. So the next bracket, a level 2, is what I got charged with. And that is presumptive distribution. And then level 1 is 100 or more grams. So basically, you've got 3 brackets with tiny little bits of drugs. And then the second bracket is, you know, you're likely a drug dealer. And then the second bracket is you're probably selling some shit. And then the first bracket, 100 plus grams, it's like, well, you're for sure selling shit, or you're a politician. So I got charged with level 2 because I had 7 grams, and that was possession with intent to distribute, based just off the fact that I had 7 grams. There was nobody was testifying saying they'd bought shit. They didn't have any surveillance of people coming in and out of my house. Nothing. Just based purely on the fact that I had about 125 bucks worth of drugs. I was charged with distribution. Now also, under Kansas law, if you have a child in any place where meth is cooked, distributed, or intended to be distributed, that's aggravated child endangerment. So the first time I got raided, I was charged with possession with intent to distribute. It's a distribution charge. I was charged with distribution, level 2. I was charged with aggravated endangerment of a child because, again, this is all presumptive. They assume that I'm selling since I had that much. And they assume that it's aggravated child endangerment because they assume that I intended to sell. Just a domino worth of assumptions. As well as possession of paraphernalia, which is like a big misdemeanor. So that was the first time I got raided. Then in between the second and the third time, second time nothing came out of it. They were looking for white collar crimes. That's a whole nother story. In between the second and third time, they decided to go ahead and charge me with poaching crimes, even though all the guns they seized were legally owned and they had no poaching evidence. They decided to throw those on. Then they raided me again because actually they had a pretty fucking weak case against me. And we were going to take it to trial, and I had a private attorney, and we would have won because they should not have blowtorched into my safes. That is illegal. The safes weren't mentioned on the search warrants. When they raided me, they handcuffed me, said, "What's the combination of the safes?" I said, "I want my lawyer." They took me to jail. They called a locksmith. He couldn't get into the safes. So they called the fire department. They couldn't get in the safes. So they called a portable welding service, and a couple guys with blowtorches blowtorched open 4 safes in my house. And that's where they found the drugs. So under Kansas law, they shouldn't have done that. The safe should have been mentioned on the search warrant. Anyway, since they had a weak case, and since I was a dumbass, and assumed they wouldn't raid me again, they did raid me again a third time that summer, and I got caught with just simple possession. I just had some personal stuff. I had a bowl. I just woken up, gotten high, was out on the back porch smoking a cigarette, and I heard a stick snap, and I assumed that it was my landlord, because that was the assumption. But it was not. It was several counties of sheriffs, and they swarmed around the side of the house, all with their AR-15s off safety, the whole dramatic thing. And I got one dude on the right side barking orders, and one dude on the left side barking orders, because they came around the house at the same time, and both of them have AR-15s pointed at me, and both of them are telling me to do different things. So the dude on the right is telling me to put my hands on my head, and the dude on the left is telling me to lay down. And thank God I didn't get shot. But All in all, I got 9 charges out of those. 4 were poaching, 2 were drug possession, 2 were drug paraphernalia possession, and then 1 was aggravated endangerment of a child. Everything was dropped except for a level 4 possession with intent to distribute, which is level 4 is again, that's what, 1 gram to 3.5 grams. That means I got caught with a little bit, but they went ahead and rolled it up. No, I'm sorry, level 3 possession with intent. Level 3 possession with intent is all I got convicted of in the plea deal. The way that this stuff works is they just hammer you with as much shit as possible. I had 3 felony charges, a shitload of high-level misdemeanors. 1 felony I caught while out on felony bond, which is in Kansas's special rule sentencing, which means I would have to serve those consecutively. Basically, I was looking at 17 years, and their plea offer was for it's called a border box, which means that there's some crimes are presumptive probation and some are presumptive prison, and then border box is sort of the niche category where it's like you could go either way. You might get probation, you might get prison, but it's up to the judge. So I took a border box plea deal and got sentenced to 30 months community corrections, which is still within, it's basically probation, except instead of being run by the county or the state like most probation programs are, this is the Department of Corrections probation program. So I've got a whole DOC prison number. It's intensive community corrections. I'm basically serving my prison sentence on the outside. So I have to check in very regularly, had to take risk assessments, had to, random UAs, keep a job, this, that, now the way the charges versus convictions work is they just snowball people. The court systems, the legal system in America, especially, maybe not especially, but Kansas is for sure one of the worst, is they just plow you so that you'll take a plea deal. They have no intention of taking this shit to trial. You're presumed innocent until guilty. When I got raided the first time, I had 0 criminal record at all. At sentencing, the judge even said, wow, you had a cleaner criminal record than me before this. Still, they came in, they blowtorched my shit open, they took everything, all my assets, charged me with, charged me with crimes, set my bond at $100,000. So, what options do I have? Well, eventually I was able to get my bond lowered to $50,000 and bond out. Ideally, for the law enforcement community, the legal system, for Tracy Beverland and Max Barrett and Pratt, what they would prefer is to keep somebody locked up in jail to put that sort of mental pressure on them to take a plea deal. I bonded out and got a private attorney. I was lucky enough to be good friends with my divorce attorney from prior. So when I got arrested, I basically had an open tab with a private attorney, which, saved my fucking ass. Otherwise, just to get a retainer for a private attorney with those sort of charges, it would have been $10,000 at least. And nobody in this situation just has $10,000 laying on hand. So, that's a mess. But when they snowball you, when they take all your stuff, all your assets are seized, everything except for a bank account and 2 cars, two not great cars, everything was seized, all my hard assets. Like I said, they torched open 4 safes and took everything out of it and took it all into evidence. My wallet, my birth certificate, my keys, jewelry, whatever, name it. They cleaned it out. So you got huge charges. You've got no assets. You can't get a job, really. especially in a small community like that, where you're a headline, front page news, across the state. You can't, during the waiting period for trial, I was on supervised bond as our most bigger cases, which means that I had to check in with the court services every week. I had to take UAs every week. I couldn't go you just can't go anywhere. You're trapped there. You're trapped there with no money, shitloads of charges, unless you happen to be like me and be good friends with a lawyer who's also a good criminal defense attorney. You've got a court-appointed attorney, and the goal is to get the defendant to collapse and take a plea deal. Now, something that's worth mentioning is in Kansas, court-appointed attorneys are paid $300 per case. $300. You can't buy an hour of an attorney's time for $300. I mean, I think that the average defense or divorce attorney in Podunk, Kansas is $200. So basically, the state buys each defendant an hour and a half of time for the whole case. That attorney is not going to defend you, not going to represent you. They don't want to do anything except for hand you the plea deal paperwork. I saw it 1,000 times in Pratt. It's just like that all over the country. Public defenders don't do anything except for accept plea deals and convince their client that they're defending them. $300 is what what a public defender gets to represent a client. On average, the state of Kansas spends $19,100 to prosecute. Or maybe that was Pratt. You know what? I'm going to look up these exact statistics and then clip them in right here. So there's the long answer to the first question. All right, so in Pratt County in 2018, the county budget says that it spent $71,000 and change on public defenders versus $240,000 and change on the county attorney. So, state of Kansas mandates that public defenders be paid $80 an hour, which is way less than the market rate for a regular attorney. There is also, and I didn't find it by the time I put this together, there is also somewhere a case by case sort of bill that they've got budgeted in. And I want to say that that in 2017, it was $289 per lawyer per case. Obviously, that will fluctuate, but that's sort of the estimate that public defenders start with. Any more than that, you got to start documenting shit. So really, most public defenders are going into the case expecting to spend $300 worth of time on this. And according to the state reimbursement rates, that's almost 4 hours per case. According to private practice, that's an hour, basically. The other thing is that in, say, Pratt County, and I did look this up, the the county attorney, the prosecutor's office, their budget, their expenditures for 2018 were $240,000. Public defense expenditures for the same year were $71,000. So the legal representation is, that's 340% more money the prosecutor's getting than the defense is getting. And that's just for prosecution. That's not sheriff's office, courts, jails. Fuck. You've got this prosecuting attorney getting paid 3.5 times more than the defense attorneys just for representing their clients in court, as well as she's got at her disposal law enforcement, an unlimited amount of law enforcement resources. I got raided 3 times in 1 year by multiple departments every time. That's a ton of money. I think the last time I got raided, there was probably 30 people there in full fucking SWAT team gear and all that shit. I was also under investigation for 3.5 years before they even raided me. So, just to use that as an example, the amount of law enforcement money that is spent prosecuting somebody is astronomically higher than the amount of prosecutorial money. Next question. How did I avoid conflict with potentially mentally unstable people? Somebody who didn't know about my phenomenal clout in the rural Kansas drug community. Scarface may have had a mansion and a machine gun with a grenade launcher and shit, but I'm telling you, what I had was like all the used subwoofers you could want. I probably had your tools. I had a whole shit ton of used tools, scrap metal. That crap Kansas drug market was booming, baby. So how'd I deal with crazy people who didn't respect my authority or recognize it? And for me, well, so in jail, if you have crazy people, and you do, like that are just causing fights indiscriminately, they're typically moved to solitary pretty quick. And that was generally the case. The first time I went in to General Pop, I was in with a bunch of pretty passive guys, pretty agreeable guys. Actually, I didn't know any of them before I went in the first time. But two of them, no, I'm lying. I knew one of them a little bit. I'd met him a couple times. But the way that he responded to me when I walked in the cell, which is basically he jumped up out of his cot, out of his bunk, and, hi, I know you. Do you remember me? Kind of really anxious, asking, if I remembered him. And I said, yeah, and just kind of did one of these, which is like, yeah, we're cool. Because the last time he had done something, I'd seen him done something that, it wasn't a big deal. It just low-key irritated me, and I let him know that I was low-key irritated. So he was real anxious to make sure that we were on good terms when I walked in, and he had, cleared off a space and helped me get a bed ready and everything. Just really, really appeasing. And everybody in the tank, general population, was real chill that round. But between that, and there's another guy there who knew who I was, who had some clout in the tank, I guess you'd say. He'd been in there a little while. But nobody fucked with me at all. At all. And actually, if the first guy jumping up and give me a bed, and that's, if that didn't really pave my way enough, the second guy who knew who I was, he wasn't for sure, but he thought I was. Well, when I got booked in, or was like, what are you here for? I said, drug possession, which was a huge understatement for what I was actually charged with and all the shit that had gone on. Well, that dude called his girlfriend and asked what was up, and when he got the actual story and it got back, just the way that he handled it, really low-key, really delicately, kind of pulled me aside privately, said, I know who you are. I was like, yeah? He's like, yeah. I've seen you before. Yeah. You're not just in here for possession. I'm like, no. He's like, my girlfriend told me. That time I was given, actually probably the most clout of all the 3 stays. The second time, when I got arrested and went into General Pop, I actually didn't go into a tank, which is an 8-man cell. I went into a 2-man cell, and that time I had sort of resisted going into general population. I didn't like it. I wanted to bond out. I wanted to be close to the front. I wanted to be in a holding cell, is what I requested, to stay in a holding cell. I don't know why. It just felt less in the tunes. For whatever reason, for my own peace of mind, I thought that I'd like to stay in a holding cell up front, so could they keep me in a holding cell? And they accommodated for a few days before finally they said, "Do you get along with Jesse?" One of the CEOs, one of the guards came in and said, "You know Jesse?" I said, "Yes." Jesse's actually the guy who knew me the first time I went in, who jumped up out of bed. I said, "Yes, I know Jesse." He said, "Do you get along with Jesse? Because Jesse just got in a fight, and I got to move him someplace. He's only got a week left in his sentence. I really don't want to have to leave him in max in solitary for the rest of his stay, because the guard liked him, and he's like, could you get along with Jesse, and we put you in a cell together so he didn't have to be alone." I said, "Yeah, that's fine." So I went back and I was in a 2-man cell with Jesse. And again, it was more of what you'd sort of expect. He was nice and accommodating, and I was expected to be treated like fucking God. I had the bottom bunk, he had the top bunk. Whenever I had to take a shit, I'd say, "Jesse, it's poop time." He'd go up, get in bed, pull the blanket, turn towards the wall, and pull the covers up over his head until I was done pooping, which is the most privacy you'll ever get pooping in jail. I mean, I was still looking straight at a camera while I did it, which I think is illegal to have the cameras pointing straight at the toilets, but nevertheless, that's what it was in Pratt County Cell 6, I want to say. I think it was Cell 6 or 7. Anyways, that was all fine. I was only in 10 days that time before my bond got lowered to $25,000 from $50, and I was able to bond out again. The only thing was, I mean, Jesse is nice to me and accommodating. He wasn't a crazy person. He's maybe, got a couple screws loose, but he's not a crazy person. He will fight, but that again wasn't that situation. I never had that sort of relationship with Jesse. He was very accommodating the whole time, and he didn't have teeth. I mean, he had like false teeth, like dentures. We'd take them out. Every now and then you'd hear that smacking, gumming noise. Fucking hated that. That would get under my skin. But anytime he saw I was about to get pissed off, and I just had enough, about every 3 days, dinner would come and he'd go, "I'm not even hungry. Do you want my whole tray?" And I'd go, "Yes, thank you." The third time I was in, I was in a longer stay, and there was a rowdier group, including new people who would come in and go out, and most of it was, how did I avoid conflicts with crazy people? Because there were crazy people, and if you are a crazy person who's scared crazy, I am somebody who will get preemptively attacked out of fear. And I did have a close call with one guy up front real quick. He was young Mexican guy who was looking at quite a bit of time, and had a girlfriend who was kind of, he really was having a bad run of things, and also had been in this jail for 3 months by the time I got there. And no, longer than that. He'd been in there a long time. He'd been in there 6 months or 7 months, because he'd been in the tank the longest. And I mean, that'll do some fuck shit to your brain. But he was very defensive and on alert for threats, and when I came in the tank, I knew enough people there that I walked in sort of friendly with the room, if you will. joking, blah blah, and just assume that people who didn't know me would get the drift, and no big deal, you know. Well, this dude, when I walked in, the first thing I said was, "Who's given up a bottom corner bunk for me?" Jokingly, which is the best bunk to have. And the two guys who had them were there the longest. That's how it works. Eventually, if you're in jail long enough, you get your turn to have a bottom bunk that's up against the side wall. I never stayed in there that long, but in hindsight, this was a joke that was in poor taste, because both of the guys occupying bottom corner bunks were A, guys I did not know, and B, they were in a bottom corner bunk. So they'd been in there a fucking while, you know. Well, he responded, you know, there was no issues then, but this guy seemed to he just had trouble getting comfortable with me, especially after that. And pretty quick out the gate, he I don't remember what happened, something nominal, like I don't remember. I think I accused him of something, but it was something silly, like, "Did you see my socks?" or some shit. I don't remember. But I asked him a question, and he said no, and then I asked him again or something. Basically, I implied that he was lying. I don't remember the specifics, but I implied that he was lying, and he sort of flipped out and jumped up and got in my face and tried to start a fight, and I backed down. How did I handle that? When he was yelling, I stood my ground. Let me rephrase that. I stood my ground. I didn't back down. Because what it is it's a lot of like puffing up and jumping, but no actual contact, right? So I stood my ground and didn't respond the whole time that he was jumping and kind of getting in my face and not touching me. He didn't touch me. That was a key thing. That's a key thing across the board. If he had touched me, we would have been fighting. But I didn't want to fight Manny, because he's quite a bit smaller than me and younger than me and scared. I mean, the reason I didn't want to fight Manny is because we were in jail, and the sheriffs were in the jail, and the sheriffs wanted to give me more charges. So basically, unless something overt happened, I didn't have a right to self-defense in jail. At least that's how I perceived it. And that's how I treated it. So in that situation, I stood my ground. I let him do his blah, 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 blah. And then after that, I don't remember if I said something to him or not, but after he was done puffing and stopped, I basically backed off and went to my bunk and let that blow over. Now, once he had kind of come down from his complete freak out, and which was followed by a meltdown, I said something very shortly after, maybe an hour later, whatever. I passed him. I said, "Manny, I'm not. I don't have a problem with you for this. Basically, we're still cool. I understand that people are pissed off here. However, it won't happen again." And he didn't say anything back to that. We never had any more issues after that. He did later. That was real quick up front. We spent 2.5 months together in that room. He did mention later that when I came in and I said, "Who's giving me a corner bottom bunk?" that freaked him out. And he was a very volatile, reactive person, sort of like who you're asking about. He's somebody that had to be managed. He did end up getting in fights with other inmates. But mostly you can just by being aware of people. It was all watching other people, paying attention. You can tell, if you're paying attention, you can tell who's on edge. You can tell who's looking to prove something. You know the directions they're going in. So anytime we got somebody who was trying to start shit or testy, I would just watch them and make sure that I wasn't the one who got in that altercation, because ultimately you get in a fight and somebody's going to isolation. So mostly it was just by watching. I had a close call once, got out of it, paid a little bit more attention. That's where the FE really comes into play, like I mentioned in the video with Kat. Did a lot of FEing, and I guess SEing. I'm just watching people, paying attention to where they're at, what's going on with them, what phone call they just got. Things I should have been paying more attention to up front, but was a little bit arrogant about. Last question was, do I think Enneagram 8s would experience fear from loss of control or being harmed more than other Enneagram types? No, I don't. But I do think in a different way. And really, what I was thinking about when I mentioned this is in terms of Enneagram 8's core fear. Enneagram 8's core fear is a lot around, it's not being in control and also being harmed. Is kind of how I was thinking about it. I was really focusing on the not being in control part. And I guess people don't really realize, I think a lot of people in prison would be scared of primarily other inmates. And for me, it was the experience of actually realizing I am completely controlless, because the last time I went in, I was in jail with no bond. I had 2 bonds revoked. I wasn't going anywhere. There's nothing my lawyer, anybody could do to get me out. I was there until the judge said otherwise. And at that point, I also didn't know where I was going. The judge could say rehab. The judge could say stay here and serve out a sentence. The judge could say you're going to prison. The judge could say you're going home. If I got probation or corrections, which I was hoping for, which I did, then the courts would say where I could live. Could I move out of county, out of city, out of state? Ultimately, I had to stay in state, but not in the same county, thank God. So that was, and it's something that you kind of know when I'm saying it out loud, like it's kind of like, yeah, you have to stay in jail until you're released. Well, yeah. But there's something about being in that situation and being legit fucking powerless. There's nothing you can do. You can cry, you can scream, you can kick, you can call, you can beg. Nobody can get me out. I can't get myself out. The harder I throw a temper tantrum or go insane, whatever, the worse it's going to get, because I'll just get moved to isolation. You don't get to go to the hospital. People try that. You don't get to go. You have to be really fucked up to get to a psych hospital, say. Like, dude, people, fuck. People try to commit suicide in these places all the time. Sometimes they succeed. They've got single man cells, padded rooms, straitjackets, all that stuff for a reason. People try to get out, they scream, they cry, they beg. You're not going anywhere. You could see it every day. You could hear it down the hallways every day. People try desperately to get out. And ultimately, you hear stories. One guy, what did he do? He shit on his meal tray and ate a piece of his own shit to get sent to a psych hospital from jail. This was after he'd already smeared shit all over his cell, all over himself. It wasn't working. They just make your state more miserable so you don't act that way. But that's really what it centered around, was the realization, the feeling of being completely powerless to leave this 28 by 30 cinder block windowless room with 24/7 fluorescent lighting. Nothing I could do. And as much as I try to describe it, nothing compares to the impact of feeling it and understanding it. Now you're in a different game, and for me, the game wasn't against the other inmates. It wasn't against the guards. Those, I tried to get along with the other inmates, and any conflicts or little shit with the guards, that was all just recreation. The real battle was with me in my own head.